2, 3, 4.
Hello, good evening or good morning, where you are. I'm Pierrot for another episode of Pierrot's Literature Show. This time, I'll be going through an assortment of short stories. Um, Now, about these short stories is that some of them, at least most of them, are going to be from English-speaking authors. Many of these, because up until this point, all the pieces of literature I've read have been written in English originally and not translations from different languages. Not so tonight. Tonight we'll be having a variety from foreign authors translated to English, as well as a couple of English. We'll see as we go along, I suppose. I've got about between 3 to 5 stories planned for tonight, depending on whether we will manage to fit it into this this 1 hour, but we'll see what we get. Our first piece I'm going to be reading is On Seeing the 100% Perfect Girl One Beautiful April Morning by Haruki Murakami. And that is particularly the reason why I chose Holland 1945 as the opening song for today's episode because there's something very simple, very precious, and almost cute about um, uh, this piece of literature. Now, I'd like to ask whoever's watching right now about my mic. Can if anyone will comment about it, I'd be very appreciative because it helped me fix myself as much as possible before we start. What do you mean my mic is a bit off? Is it because I put on a lot of gain for it? Here, okay, I understand. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reducing the gain. So how about this? Is it better? It's a bit lower, but see, because I can't seem to get my mic in order. Well, that's a goddamn shame. So is it a matter that of my mic being just bad, or is it because my settings for this whole thing aren't correct? Because I gotta be clear, I'm a reading kind of guy. Okay, I understand what you're saying. We'll get on it. It's a pretty simple piece, pretty cute. We'll see from then. On seeing the 100% perfect girl one beautiful April morning, Haruki Murakami. One beautiful April morning, on a narrow side street in Tokyo's fashionable Harajuku neighborhood, I walked past the 100% perfect girl. Tell you the truth, she's not that good looking. She doesn't stand out in any way. Her clothes are nothing special. The back of her hair is still bent out of shape from sleep. She isn't young either. Must be near 30, not even close to a girl, properly speaking. But still, I know from 50 yards away, she's the 100% perfect girl for me. The moment I see her, there's a rumbling in my chest, and my mouth is as dry as a desert. Maybe you have your own particular favorite type of girl. One with slim ankles, say, or big eyes, or graceful fingers, or you're drawn for no good reason to girls who take their time with every meal. I have my own preferences, of course. Sometimes in a restaurant I'll catch myself staring at the girl at the next table to mine because I like the shape of her nose. But no one can insist that his 100% perfect girl correspond to some preconceived type. Much as I like noses, I can't recall the shape of hers, or even if she had one. All I can remember for sure is that she was no great beauty. It's weird. Yesterday on the street I passed the 100% girl, I tell someone. Yeah, he says. Good looking? Not really. Your favorite type then? I don't know. I can't seem to remember anything about her. The shape of her eyes or the size of her breasts. Strange. Yeah, strange. So anyhow, he says, already bored. What did you do? Talk to her? Follow her? Nah, just passed her on the street. He's walking east to west, and I west to east. It's really nice. It's a really nice April morning. Wish I could talk to her. Half an hour would be plenty. Just ask her about herself, tell her about myself, and what I'd really like to do. Explain to her the complexities of fate that have led to our passing each other on a side street in Harajuku on a beautiful April morning in 1981. This was something sure to be crammed full of warm secrets, like an antique clock built when peace filled the world. After talking, we'd have lunch somewhere, maybe see a Woody Allen movie, stop by a hotel bar for cocktails. With any kind of luck, we might end up in bed. Potentiality knocks on the door of my heart. Now the distance between us has narrowed to 15 yards. How can I approach her? What should I say? Good morning, miss. Do you think you could spare half an hour for a little conversation? Ridiculous. I'd sound like an insurance salesman. Pardon me, but would you happen to know if there's an all-night cleaners in the neighborhood? No, this is just ridiculous. I'm not carrying any laundry for one thing. And who's going to buy a line like that? Maybe the simple truth would do. Good morning. You are the 100% perfect girl for me. No, she wouldn't believe it. Or even if she did, she might not want to talk to me. Sorry, she could say. I might be 100% perfect girl for you, but you're not the 100% perfect boy for me. It could happen, and if I found myself in that situation, I'd probably go to pieces. I'd never recover from the shock. I'm 32, and that's what growing older is all about. We pause in front of a flower shop. A small, warm air moss touches my skin. The asphalt is damp, and I catch the scent of roses. I can't bring myself to speak to her. She wears a white sweater, and in her right hand she holds a crisp white envelope lacking only a stamp. So, she's written somebody a letter. Maybe spend the whole night writing, to judge from the sleepy look in her eyes. The envelope could contain every secret she's ever had. I take a few more strides and turn. She is lost in the crowd. Now, of course, I know exactly what I should have said to her. It would have been a long speech, though, far too long for me to have delivered it properly. The ideas I come up with are never very practical. Oh well, it would have started once upon a time and ended a sad story, don't you think? Once upon a time, there lived a boy and a girl. The boy was 18 and the girl 16. He was not unusually handsome, and she was not especially beautiful. They were just an ordinary, lonely boy, an ordinary, lonely girl, like all the others. But they believed with their whole hearts that somewhere in the world there lived the 100% perfect boy and the 100% perfect girl for them. Yes, they believed in a miracle, and that miracle actually happened. One day, the two came up upon each other on the corner of a street. This is amazing, he said. I've been looking for you all my life. You may not believe this, but you are the 100% perfect girl for me. And you, she said to him, are the 100% perfect boy for me. Exactly as I pictured you in every detail. It's like a dream. They sat on the park bench, held hands, and told each other their stories hour after hour. They were not lonely anymore. They had found and been found by their 100% perfect other. What a wonderful thing it is to find and be found by your 100% perfect other. It's a miracle, a cosmic miracle. As they sat and talked, however, a tiny, tiny sliver of doubt took root in their hearts. Was it really all right for one's dreams to come so true so easily? And so, when there came a momentary lull in their conversation, the boy said to the girl, let's test ourselves. Just once. We really are each other's 100% perfect lovers. Then sometime Somewhere we will meet again without fail. And when that happens, and we know that we are the 100% perfect ones, we'll marry then and there. What do you think? Yes, she said. This is exactly what we should do. And so they parted, he to the east and he to the west. The test they had agreed upon, however, was utterly unnecessary. They shouldn't have never undertaken it, because they really and truly were each other's 100% perfect lovers, and it was a miracle that they had ever met. But it was impossible for them to notice, young as they were. The cold, indifferent waves of fate proceeded to toss them unmercifully. One winter, both the boy and the girl came down with the season's terrible influenza, and after drifting for weeks between life and death, they lost all memory of their earlier years. When they awoke, their heads were as empty as the young D.H. Lawrence's piggy bank. They were two bright, determined young people, however, and through their unremitting efforts, they were able to acquire once again the knowledge and feeling that qualified them to return as full-fledged members of society. Heaven be praised. They became truly upstanding citizens, who knew how to transfer from one subway line to another, were fully capable of sending a special delivery letter at the post office. Indeed, they even experienced love again, sometimes as much as 75% or even 85% love. Time passed with a shocking swiftness, and soon the boy was 32 and the girl 30. One beautiful April morning, in search of a cup of coffee to start the day, the boy was walking from west to east, while the girl, intending to send a special delivery letter, was walking from east to west, but along the same narrow street in the Harajuku neighborhood of Tokyo. They passed each other in the very center of the street, the faintest gleam of their lost memories glimmering for the briefest moment in their hearts. Each felt a rumbling in their chest, and they knew. She's the 100% perfect girl for me. He's the 100% perfect boy for me. But the glow of their memories was far too weak, and their thoughts no longer had the clarity of 14 years earlier. Without a word, they passed each other, disappearing into the crowd forever. Sad story, don't you think? Yes, that's it. That is what I should have said to her. And that brings to an end our piece by Haruki Murakami. A sad thing he doesn't manage to get his 100% perfect girl. No less. Time will pass. Now, I'll be taking a short break, and in preparation for the next piece. Meanwhile, I'd like you to enjoy this excellent piece of music by the Protomen.
My father worked the mines till the day it took his life. Stole him from his only son, and it stole him from his wife. And I swore upon his grave, someday I would make things right. So I learned how to bend steel, I learned how to make it move. just as they withstood all the hell we put men through. With hands of iron, there's not a task we couldn't do. They've waited so long for this day, someone to take the death away. No son would ever have to say, my father worked into his grave.
Listen to yourself, then listen carefully to me. If you replace the working parts, you get a different machine. The man who turns the wheels, they will follow anywhere he leads. We've spent our whole lives searching for a way to make a better world. Giving everything to them, asking nothing in return. Well, here it is, our chance to take back everything we've earned.
So long
they waited so long for this day.
Take the death away.
No price they wouldn't pay for someone else to lead them. Don't turn your back on me.
What will I become with the things I will create? I never said that men should bow. I never said that men should break. I only want what's best. The one I love, she works so hard, works her fingers till they bleed. Some of the pain that she endures bring a strong man to his knees. I only want to help.
You are a fool.
You underestimate the character
Well,
of
they
man.
are weaker than you
You
think.
think that they'll surrender if you bind their working hands, but they are strong.
Just wait and see.
We will build cities in a day.
Men would cower
We
at the
will build
sight.
towers to the heavens.
Man was not built for such a
We
height.
will be heroes.
We will build heroes.
They've waited so long for this day, someone to take the death away. No son would ever have to say, my father worked into his grave. Men sleep tonight with hands of bone. They will awake with hands of steel. With these hands we will destroy, and with these hands we will rebuild. And we will stand above the city, rising high above the streets. From tops of buildings we will look at all that lies beneath our feet. We will raise our hands above us, coast still shining in the sun. With these hands that will not bleed, my father's battle will be won.
Hello, I'm back, and that was the good doctor by the photo man. And really, because it is a doctor now, it's going to be a short story about a doctor, specifically the country doctor, Franz Kafka. Now, I've seen different translations of it. A country doctor, simply a country doctor, just country doctor, whatever it may be. The particular one I'll be reading is A Country Doctor by Ian Johnson. I was in great difficulty. An urgent journey was facing me. A seriously ill man was waiting for me in a village 10 miles distant. A severe snowstorm filled the space between him and me. I had a carriage, a light one, with large wheels, entirely suitable for our country roads. Wrapped up in furs with the bag of instruments in my hand, I was already standing in the courtyard, ready for the journey. But the horse was missing. The horse! My own horse had died the previous night as a result of over-exertion in this icy winter. My servant girl was at that very moment running around the village to see if she could borrow a horse. It was hopeless. I knew that. I stood there, useless, increasingly covered with snow, becoming all the time more immobile. The girl appeared at the gate, alone. She was swinging the lantern. Of course. Who was now going to lend her his horse for such a journey? I walked once again across the courtyard. I couldn't see what to do. Distracted and tormented, I kicked my foot against the cracked door of the pigsty, which had not been used for years. The door opened and banged to and fro on its hinges. A warmth and smell as if from horses came out. A dim, stall lantern on a rope swayed inside. A man huddled down in the stall below showed his open, blue-eyed face. "Shall I hitch up?" he asked, rolling out on all fours. I didn't know what to say, and bent down to see what was still in the stall. The servant girl stood beside me. "One doesn't know the sorts of things one has stored in his own house," she said, and we both laughed. "Hey brother, hey sister," the groom cried out, and two horses, powerful animals with strong flanks, shoved their way one behind the other, legs close to the bodies, lowering their well-formed heads like camels, and getting through the door space, which they completely filled, only through the powerful movements of their rumps. But right away they stood up straight, long-legged with thick steaming bodies. "Help 'em," I said, and the girl obediently hurried to hand the wagon harness to the groom. But as soon as she was beside him, the groom put his arms around her and pushes his face against hers. She screams out and runs over to me. On the girl's cheek were red marks from 2 rows of teeth. "You brute!" I cry out in fury. "Do you want the whip?" But I immediately remembered that he is a stranger. I don't know where he comes from, and he's helping me out of his own free will when everyone else is refusing to. As if he knows what I was thinking, he takes no offense at my threat, but turns around to me once more, still busy with the horses. Then he says, "Climb in," and in fact, everything's ready. I notice that I have never before traveled with such a beautiful team of horses, and I climb in happily. But I'll take the reins. "You don't know the way," I say. "Of course," he says. "I'm not going with you. I'm staying with Rosa." "No!" screams Rosa, and runs into the house with an accurate premonition of the inevitability of her fate. I hear the door chain rattling as she sets it in place. I hear the lock click. I see how in addition she runs down the corridor and through the rooms, putting out all the lights in order to make herself impossible to find. "You're coming with me," I say to the groom, "or I'll give up the journey, no matter how urgent it is. It's not my intention to give you the girl as a price for the trip. "Giddy up," he says, and claps his hand. The carriage is torn away, like a piece of wood in a current. I still hear how the door of my house is breaking down and splitting apart under the groom's onslaught, and then my eyes and ears are filled with a roaring sound which overwhelms all of my senses at once, but only for a moment. Then I'm already there, as if the farmyard of my invalid opens up immediately in front of my courtyard gate. The horses stand quietly. The snowfall has stopped. Moonlight all around. The sick man's parents rush out of the house, his sister behind them. They almost lift me out of the carriage. I get nothing from their confused talking. In the sick room one can hardly breathe the air. The neglected cooking stove is smoking. I want to push open the window, but first I'll look at the sick man. Thin, without fever, not cold, not warm, with empty eyes, without a shirt. The young man under the stuffed quilt heaves himself up, hangs around my throat, and whispers in my ear, "Doctor, doctor, let me die." I look around. No one has heard. Parents stand silently, leaning forward, and wait for my opinion. The sister has brought a stool for my handbag. I open the bag and look among my instruments. The young man constantly gropes at me from the bed to remind me of his requests. I take some tweezers, test them in the candlelight, and put them back. Yes, I think blasphemously. In such cases the gods do help. They send me the missing cord, and even add a second one because it's urgent, and even throw in a groom as a bonus. Now for the first time I think once more of Rosa. What am I doing? How am I saving her? How do I pull her out from under this groom, 10 miles away from her, with uncontrollable horses in front of my carriage? These horses who have somehow loosened their straps are pushing open the window from outside. I don't know how. Each one is sticking its head through a window, unmoved by the crying of the family, is observing the invalid. I'll go back right away, I think, as if the horses were ordering me to journey back. But I allow the sister, who thinks I am in a daze because of the heat, to take off my fur coat. A glass of rum is prepared for me. The old man claps me on the shoulder. The sacrifice of his treasure justifies this familiarity. I shake my head. In the narrow circle of the old man's thinking, I was not well. That's the only reason I refuse to drink. The mother stands by the bed and entices me over. I follow, and, as a horse neighs loudly at the ceiling, lay my head on the young man's chest, which trembles under my wet beard. That confirms what I know. The young man is healthy. His circulation is a little off, saturated with coffee by his caring mother, but he's healthy and best pushed out of bed with a shove. I'm no improver of the world, and let him lie there. I'm employed by the district, and do my duty to the full, right to the point where it's almost too much. Badly paid, but I'm generous, and ready to help the poor. I still have to look after Rosa, and then the young man may have his way. No one in the village will lend me his. Excuse me, and I want to die too. What am I doing here in this endless winter? My horse is dead, and there's no one in the village who'll lend me his. I have to drag my team out of the pigsty. If they hadn't happened to be in horses, I'd have to travel with pigs. That's the way it is. And I nod to the family. They know nothing about it. And if they did know, they wouldn't believe it. Incidentally, it's easy to write prescriptions, but difficult to come to an understanding with people. Now, at this point, my visit might have come to an end. They have once more called for my help unnecessarily. I'm used to that. With the help of my night bell, the entire region torments me. But that this time I scarcely notice. The sacrifice is too great, and I must somehow, in my own head, subtly rationalize it away for the moment. in order to not let loose at this family who cannot, even with their best will, give me Rosa back again. But as I am closing up by hand, sorry, as excuse me, very sorry. But as I am closing up my handbag and calling for my fur coat, the family is standing together, the father sniffing the glass of rum in his hand, the mother probably flapping up, very sorry, probably disappointed in me. What more do these people expect? Cheerfully biting her lips, and the sister flapping a very bloody hand towel. I am somehow ready, in the circumstances, to concede that the young man is perhaps none the less sick. I go to him. He smiles up at me, as if I was bringing him the most nourishing kind of soup. Ah, now both horses are whinnying. The noise is probably supposed to come from the higher regions, in order to illuminate my examination. And now I found out that yes, indeed, the young man is ill. On his right side, in the region of the hip, the wound the size of the palm of one's hand has opened up, rose-colored, in many different shadings, dark in depths, brighter on the edges, delicately grained with uneven patches of blood, opens to the light like a mine. That's what it looks like from a distance. Close up, a complication is apparent. Who can look at that without whistling softly? Worms, as thick and long as my little finger, themselves rose-colored and also spattered with blood, are wriggling their white bodies with many limbs from their stronghold in the inner of the wound towards the light. Poor young man, there's no helping you. I found out your great wound. You were dying from this flower on your side. The family is happy. They see me doing something. The sister says that to the mother. The mother tells the father tells a few guests who are coming in on the tiptoe through the moonlight of the open door, balancing themselves with outstretched arms.
Will you save me?
Will you save me? Whispers the young man, sobbing, quite blinded by the life inside his wound. That's how people are in my region, always demanding the impossible from the doctor. They have lost the old faith. The priest sits at home and tears his religious robes to pieces, one after the other, but the doctor is supposed to achieve everything with his delicate surgeon's hand. Well, it's what they like to think. I have not offered myself. If they use me for sacred purposes, I let that happen to me as well. What more do I want? An old country doctor, robbed of my servant girl. They come, the families and the village elders, and take my clothes off. A choir of school children with the teacher at the head stands in front of the house and sings an extremely simple melody with the words, "Take his clothes off and then he'll heal. Doesn't cure, then kill him. It's only a doctor, it's only a doctor." Then I am stripped of my clothes, and, with my fingers in my beard and my head tilted to one side, I look at the people quietly. I'm completely calm and clear about everything, and stay that way, too, although it is not helping me at all, for they are now asking me by the head and feet and dragging me into the bed. They lay me against the wall on the side of the wound. Then they all go out of the room. The door is shut. The singing stops. Clouds move in front of the moon. The bedclothes lie warmly around me. In the open space of the windows the horses' heads sway like shadows. "Do you know," I hear someone saying in my ear, "my confidence in you is very small. You are shaken out from somewhere. You don't come on your own feet. Instead of helping, you give me less room on my deathbed. The best thing would be if I scratch your eyes out." "Right," I say. "It's a disgrace. But now I'm a doctor. What am I supposed to do? Believe me, things are not easy for me either. Should I be satisfied with this excuse? Alas, I'll probably have to be. I always have to make do. I came into the world with a beautiful wound. That was all I was furnished with." "Young friend," I say, "your mistake is that you have no perspective. I've already been in all the sick rooms, far and wide, and I tell you your wound is not so bad. Made in a tight corner with 2 blows from an axe. Many people offer their side and hardly hear the axe in the forest, to say nothing of the fact that it's coming closer to them. Is that really so, or are you deceiving me in my favor? It is truly so. Take the word of honor, a medical doctor. He took my word and grew still, but for now it was time to think about my escape. The horses were standing loyally in place. Clothes, fur coat, and bag were quickly snatched up. I didn't want to delay by getting dressed. If the horses rushed as they had on the journey out, I should, in fact, be springing out of that bed into my own, as it were. One horse obediently pulled back from the window. I threw my bundle into the carriage. The fur coat flew too far and was caught on a hook by only one arm. Good enough. I swung myself up onto the horse, the reins dragging loosely, one horse barely harnessed to the other, and the carriage swaying behind. Last of all, the fur coat in the snow. "Giddy up!" I said, but there was no giddying up about it. We dragged through the snowy desert like old men. For a long time the fresh but inaccurate singing of the children resounded behind us. "Enjoy yourselves, ye patients. Doctor stayed in bed with you. I'll never come home at this rate. My flourishing practice is lost. A successor is robbing me, but to no avail, for he cannot replace me. In my house the disgusting room is wreaking havoc. Rosa is his victim. I will not think it through. Naked, abandoned to the frost of this unhappy age, with an earthly carriage and unearthly horses, I drive around by myself, an old man. My fur coat hangs behind the wagon, but I cannot reach it, and no one from the nimble rabble of patients lift a finger. Betrayed! Betrayed! Once one responds to a false alarm on the night bell, there's no making it good again. Not ever. And that was The Country Doctor by Franz Kafka. Very interesting piece, if I do say so myself. I will be leaving you once again for a short break before the next piece of literature. And again, I'll leave you with a song.
She expressed herself in many different ways until she lost control again, and walked upon the edge of no escape and laughed that lost control. She's lost control again. She's lost control. She's lost control again. She's lost control.
Back once again. This time we'll be reading Pierre Menard, Order of the Quixote. Now, this is a lovely piece, one of my favorites. Get into it. This is not going to be as flowing as all the other short stories we've read today. Rather, it's going to be much more regimented. It's a criticism piece. Pierre Menard, Order of the Quixote, by Pierre Borges or Borges. I really don't know how you pronounce that name, I'm afraid. The visible ill left by this novelist can be easily and briefly enumerated. Unpardonable, therefore, are the omissions and additions perpetrated by Madame Henri Bachelier in the deceitful catalogue that a certain newspaper, whose Protestant leanings are surely no secret, has been so inconsiderate as to inflict upon the newspaper's deplorable readers. Few, and Calvinist, if not Masonic and circumcised, though they may be, Menard's true friends have greeted the catalogue with alarm, and even with a degree of sadness. One might note that only yesterday, where we gathered before his marmoreal place of rest, among the dreary cypresses, and already error is attempting to tarnish his bright memory. Most decidedly a brief rectification is imperative. I am aware that it is easy enough to call my own scant authority into question. I hope, none the less, that I shall not be prohibited from mentioning two high testimonials. The Baroness de Bacourt, at whose unforgettable Venderity I had the honour to meet, the mourned-for poet, has been so kind as to approve the lines that follow. Likewise, the Countess de Bagnoregio, one of the rarest and most cultured spirits of the Principality of Monaco, now of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, following her recent marriage to the international philanthropist Simon Couch, a man, it grieves me to say, vilified and slandered by the victims of his disinterested operations, has sacrificed to truth and to death, as she herself has phrased it, the noble reserve that is the mark of her distinction, and in an open letter, published in the magazine Lux, bestows upon me her blessing. Those commendations are sufficient, I should think. I have said that the visible product of Menard's pen is easily enumerated. Having examined his personal files with greatest care, I have established that his body of work consists of the following pieces: A. A symbolist poet that appeared twice, with variants, in the review La Conque in the numbers for March and October 1899. B. A monograph on the possibility of constructing a poetic vocabulary from concepts that are neither synonymous nor periphrastic locutions for the concepts that inform common speech, but are, rather, ideal objects created by convention essentially for the needs of poetry. Nim, 1901. A monograph on certain connections or affinities between the philosophies of Descartes, Leibniz, and John Wilkins, Nim, 1903. A monograph on Leibniz's Characteristica Universalis, Nim, 1904. A technical article on the possibility of enriching the game of chess by eliminating one of the rook's pawns. Menard proposes, recommends, debates, and finally rejects the innovation. A monograph on Ramon Lull's Ars Mania Generalis, Nim, 1906. A translation, with introduction and notes, of Ruy López de Segura's Libro de la Invención Liberal y Arte del Juego de Ajedrez, Paris, 1907. Drafts of a monograph on George Boole's Symbolic Logic. I. A study of the essential metrical rules of French prose, illustrated with examples taken from Saint-Simon, Rêve de long roman, Montpellier, October 1909. J. A reply to Luc Durtain, who had encountered that no such rules existed, illustrated with examples taken from Luc Durtain, Rêve de long roman, Montpellier, December 1909. K. A manuscript translation of Quevedo's Aguja de Navegar Cultos, titled La Boussole de Précieux. Or I presume that's what it actually pronounced like. Do not know. L. A foreword to the catalogue of an exhibit of lithographs by Carolus Arcade, Nim, 1914. M. A work entitled Les Problèmes d'un Problème, Paris, 1917, which discusses in chronological order the solutions to the famous problem of Achilles and the tortoise. Two editions of this work have so far appeared. The second bears an epigraph consisting of Leibniz's advice, Ne craignez point, monsieur la tortue, and brings up to date the chapters devoted to Russell and Descartes. N. A dogged analysis of the syntactical habits of Toulet, NRF, March 1921. Menard, as I recall, affirmed that censure and praise were sentimental operations that bore not the slightest resemblance to criticism. O. A transposition into Alexandrines of Paul Valéry's Cimetière Marine, NRF, January 1928. P. A diatribe against Paul Valéry and Jacques Reboul's Fouiller pour la suppression de la réalité, which diatribe, I might add parenthetically, states the exact reverse of Menard's true opinion of Valéry. Valéry understood this, and the two men's friendship was never imperiled. Q. A definition of the Countess de Bagnoregno in the triumphant volume. The phrase is that of another contributor, Gabriele D'Annunzio, published each year by that lady to rectify the inevitable biases of the popular press, and to present to the world and all of Italy a true picture of her person, which was so exposed, by reason of her beauty and her bearing, to erroneous and or hasty interpretations. R. A cycle of admirable sonnets dedicated to the Baroness de Bacour, 1934. S. A handwritten list of lines of poetry that owe their excellence to punctuation. There's also a footnote to it, which I will not be going into. This is the full extent, save for a few vague sonnets of occasion destined for Madame Henry Bachayer's hospitable or greedy Album de Souvenirs, for the visible life work of Pierre Menard in proper chronological order. I shall turn now to the other, the subterranean, the interminably heroic production, the oeuvre non parée, the oeuvre that must remain, for such as our human limitations, unfinished. This work, perhaps the most significant writing of our time, consists of the 9th and 38th chapters of Part 1 of Don Quixote and a fragment of chapter 22. I know that such a claim is on the face of it absurd. Justifying that absurdity shall be the primary object of this note. Two texts of distinctly unequal value inspired the undertaking. One was the philological fragment by Novalli, number 2005 in the Dresden edition to be precise, which outlines the notion of total identification with a given author. The other was one of those parasitic books that set Christ on a boulevard, Hamlet on La Canebière, or Don Quixote on Wall Street. Like every man of taste, Menard abominated those pointless travesties, which Menard would say were good for nothing, but occasioning a plebeian delight in anachronism, or, worse yet, captivating us with elementary notion that all times and places are the same, or are different. It might be more interesting, he thought, though of contradictory and superficial execution, to attempt what Daudet had so famously suggested: conjoin in a single figure, Tartarin say, both the ingenious gentleman Don Quixote and his squire. Those who have insinuated that Menard devoted his life to writing a contemporary Quixote besmirch his illustrious memory. Pierre Menard did not want to compose another Quixote, which surely is easy enough. He wanted to compose the Quixote. Nor surely need one be obliged to note that his goal was never a mechanical transcription of the original. He had no intention of copying it. His admirable ambition was to produce a number of pages which coincided, word for word and line for line, with those of Miguel de Cervantes. My purpose is merely astonishing, he wrote me on September 30, 1934, from Bayonne. The final term of a theological or metaphysical proof. The world around us, or God, or chance, or universal forms, is no more final, no more uncommon, than my revealed novel. The sole difference is that philosophers publish pleasant volumes containing the intermediate stages of their work, while I am resolved to suppress those stages of my own. And indeed, there is not a single drop to bear witness to that year's long labor. Initially, Menard's method was to be relatively simple. Learn Spanish, return to Catholicism, fight against the Moor or the Turk, forget the history of Europe from 1602 to 1918, be Miguel de Cervantes. Pierre Menard weighed that course. I know he pretty thoroughly mastered 17th century Castilian, but he discarded it as too easy, too impossible rather. The reader will say, quite so, but the undertaking was impossible from the outset, and of all impossible ways of bringing it about, this was the least interesting. To be a popular novelist of the 17th century and the 20th seemed to be a Menard of diminution, being somehow Cervantes, and arriving thereby at the Quixote that looked to Menard less challenging and therefore less interesting, then continuing to be Pierre Menard and coming to the Quixote through the experiences of Pierre Menard. It was that conviction, by the way, that obliged him to leave out the autobiographical foreword to Part 2 of the novel, including the prologue, which would have meant creating another character, Cervantes, and also presenting Quixote through that character's eyes, not Pierre Menard's. Menard, of course, spurned that easy solution. The task I have undertaken is not in essence difficult, I read at another place in that letter. If I could just be immortal, I could do it. Shall I confess that I often imagine that he did? Excuse me? Shall I confess that I often imagine that he did complete it? And that I read the Quixote, the entire Quixote, as if Menard had conceived it, a few nights ago, as I was leafing through chapter 26, never attempted by Menard, I recognized our friend's style, could almost hear his voice in the marvelous phrase, the nymphs of the rivers, the moist and grieving echo. That wonderfully effective linking of one adjective of emotion with another of physical description brought to my mind the line from Shakespeare, which I recall we discussed one afternoon. We're a malignant and a turbaned Turk. Why the Quixote? My reader may ask. That choice, made by a Spaniard, would not have been incomprehensible, but it, no doubt, is so when made by a Symboliste from Nîmes, a devotee essentially of Poe, who begat Baudelaire, who begat Mallarmé, who begat Valéry, who begat Mr. Admetus. The letter mentioned above throws some light on this point. The Quixote, explains Menard, deeply interests me, but does not seem to me, comment dirais-je, inevitable. I cannot imagine the universe without Poe's ejaculation. Ah, bear in mind this garden was enchanted, or the bitter Eve, or the Ancien Mariner. But I know myself able to imagine it without the Quixote. I am speaking, of course, of my personal ability, not of the historical resonance of those works. The Quixote is a contingent work. The Quixote is not necessary. I can premeditate committing it to writing. As it were, I can write it without falling into a tautology. At the age of 12 or 13 I read it, perhaps read it cover to cover. I cannot recall. Since then I have carefully reread certain chapters, those which, at least for the moment, I shall not attempt. I have also glanced at the interludes, comedies, the Galatea, the exemplary novels, the undoubtedly laborious trials of Pericles and Sigismunda, and the poetic voyage to Parnassus. My general recollection of the Quixote, simplified by forgetfulness and indifference, might well be the equivalent of the vague foreshadowing of a yet unwritten book. Given that image, which no one can in good conscience deny me, my problem is, without the shadow of a doubt, much more difficult than Cervantes. My obliging predecessor not spurned the collaboration of a chance. His method of composition for the immortal book was a bit à la diable. He was often swept along with the inertia of the language and the imagination. I have I have assumed the mysterious obligation to reconstruct, word for word, the novel that for him was spontaneous. This game of solitaire I play is governed by two polar rules. The first allows me to try out formal or psychological variants. The second forces me to sacrifice them for the original text, and to come, by irrefutable arguments, to those eradications. In addition to these first two artificial constraints, there is another, inherent to the project. Composing the Quixote in the early 17th century was a reasonable, necessary, and perhaps even inevitable undertaking. In the early 20th, it is virtually impossible. Not for nothing have 300 years elapsed, freighted with the most complex events. Among those events, to mention but one, the Quixote itself. In spite of those three obstacles, Menard's fragmentary Quixote is more subtle than Cervantes. Cervantes crudely juxtaposes the humble provincial reality of his country against the fantasies of the romance, while Menard chooses as his reality the land of Carmen, the century that saw the Battle of Lepanto and the plays of the Lot de Vega. What burlesque brushstrokes of local colour that choice would have inspired in Maurice Barrère or Rodriguez Larreta. Yet Menard, with perfect naturalness, avoids them. In his work, there are no gypsy goings-on, or conquistadors, or mystics, or Philip II's, or auto da fe. He ignores, overlooks, or banishes local colour. That disdain posits a new meaning for the historical novel. That disdain condemns Salambo, with no possibility of appeal. No less amazement visits one when the chapters are considered in isolation. As an example, let's look at part 1, chapter 38. treats letters. It is a matter of common knowledge, and that chapter, which treats of the curious discourse that Don Quixote made on the subject of arms and letters. It is a matter of common knowledge that in that chapter Don Quixote, like Quevedo in the analogous and later passage in La Hora de Toros, comes down against the letters and in favor of arms. Cervantes was an old soldier. From him the verdict is understandable. But that Pierre Menard's Don Quixote, contemporary of La Toraison de Clercs and Bertrand Russell, should repeat those cloudy sophistries. Madame Bachairy sees them as an admirable, typical subordination of the author to the psychology of the hero. Others, lacking all perspicacity, see it as a transcription of the Quixote. The Baroness de Bacour as influenced by Nietzsche. To that third interpretation, which I consider irrefutable, I am not certain I dare add a fourth, though it agrees very well with the almost divine modesty of Pierre Menard. His resigned or ironic habit of putting forth ideas that were the exact opposite of those actually held. We should recall that diatribe against Paul Valéry in the ephemeral Surrealist Journal edited by Jacques Rabou. The Cervantes text and the Menard text are verbally identical. The second is almost infinitely richer, more ambiguous, as distractors will say, but ambiguity is richness. It is a revelation to compare the Don Quixote of Pierre Menard with that of Miguel de Cervantes. Cervantes, for example, wrote the following, Part 5, Chapter 9. Truth, whose mother is history, rival of time, depository of deeds, witness of the past, exemplar and advisor to the present, and the future's counselor. This catalogue of attributes, written in the 17th century, and written by the ingenious layman Miguel de Cervantes, is mere rhetorical praise of history. Menard, on the other hand, writes, Truth, whose mother is history, rival of time, depository of deeds, witness of the past, exemplar and advisor to the present, and the future's counselor. History, mother of truth. The idea is staggering. Menard, a contemporary of William James, defines history not as a delving into reality, but as the very font of reality. Historical truth for Menard is not what happened, it is what we believe happened. Final phrases, exemplar and advisor to the present, and future's counselor, are brazenly pragmatic. The contrast to styles is equally striking. The archaic style of Menard, who is, in addition, not a native speaker of the language, but he writes, is somewhat affected. Not so the style of his precursor, who employs the Spanish of his time with complete naturalness. There is no intellectual exercise that is not ultimately pointless. The philosophical doctrine is, at first, a plausible description of the universe. Years go by, and it is a mere chapter, not a paragraph or proper noun in the history of philosophy. In literature, that falling by the wayside, that loss of relevance, is even better known. The Quixote, Menard remarked, was first and foremost a pleasant book. It is now an occasion for patriotic toasts, grammatical arrogance, obscene deluxe editions. Fame is a form, perhaps the worst form, of incomprehension. Those nihilistic observations were not new. What was remarkable was the decision that Pierre Menard derived from them. He resolved to anticipate the vanity that awaits all the labours of mankind. He undertook a task of infinite complexity, a task futile from the outset. He dedicated his scruples and his nights lit by midnight oil, repeating in a foreign tongue a book that already existed. His drafts were endless. He stubbornly corrected. He ripped up thousands of handwritten pages. He would allow no one to see them, and took care they did not survive him. In vain I have attempted to reconstruct. I reflected that it is legitimate to see the final Quixote as a kind of palimpsest, in which the traces, faint but not undecipherable, of our previous text must shine true. Fortunately, only a second Pierre Menard, reversing the labours of the first, would be able to exhume and revive those joys. Thinking, meditating, imagining he also loved me, are not anomalous acts. They are the normal respiration of the intelligence. To glorify the occasional exercise of that function, to treasure beyond price ancient and foreign thoughts, to recall with incredulous awe what some doctor universalis thought, is to confess our own langueur, our own barbarie. Every man should be capable of all ideas. And I believe in the future he shall be. Menard has, perhaps unwittingly, enriched the slow and rudimentary art of reading by means of a new technique, the technique of deliberate anachronism and fallacious attribution. That technique, requiring infinite patience and concentration, encourages us to read the Odyssey as though it came after the Aeneid, to read Madame Henri Bachay's Jardin du Saint-Temps as though it was written by Madame Bachelier. This technique fills the calmest books with adventure. Attributing the Imitato Christi to his Ferdinand Celine or James Joyce, is that not sufficient renovation? Those faint spiritual admonitions. Nim, 1939. And with that, the end of Menard's Sigohote by Borges. That, an end to the stream. Thank you very much.